here we are with Megan Sillito, the amazing, the fantastic, the incredible, and the
Woo!
energetic.
Woo! Woo!
And get we get to talk about leadership gets a bad name and how we can kind of find our own leadership style.
Cool. Okay, so I'm just going to throw this out. Like, when I say the word leadership, how does that feel to you?
To me, it feels a little bit of a push and pull. Like I get a positive response that's an excitement
Mm-hmm.
and an energizing. And then I also get this feeling of, oh, that's when you have to do things you don't want to do. I guess that's what comes up for me.
Yeah, cool. So I think you've described the biggest reason that people don't pick up the mantle of leadership, because they're operating under someone else's definition of it. And why would you pick up a mantle that's actually someone else's? And so, like really taking a look at throughout this time together, if I'm doing my job right, I'm going to hopefully help you undefine that and find your own definition for leadership that actually juices you up, that makes you totally excited to be it and to create from that place. Because anytime something feels kind of heavy, there's generally a lie attached or someone else's point of view that is not yours. So someone else may lead in a way that's very true to them, but if you led that way, it would feel gross because it's just not you. And underneath that is to me, true leadership is my ability to totally be me. If I'm totally being me, people notice, people respond, people get inspired, people take action. That's what happens when I'm naturally being me. And the thing is that most people don't know how to be them because they've been being who they're supposed to be or who they were told to be or who their daddy told them to be or whatever, for eons. And so you could see that we don't even know how to be us. Well, how the hell are we going to know how to be a leader then? We don't even know how to be us. So to me, true leadership is that capacity to really be you and to really be honest about who you are and to lead from that place. I am so naturally playful. You know this about me. And I really, when I was trying to be a leader before, and I was doing speaking events and running trainings and things like that. I was wearing suits and I felt like I was in drag. It was there's something about it that just wasn't fully authentic. And I was really hiding the playful, more vibrant part of me because I didn't think people would take me seriously. And so, how much if we define leadership by being, we want to be, that means somebody has to take us seriously and therefore we can't be who we really are.
Totally.
Right? And so for me, I think my true leadership began when I decided that hey, I'm about play and I'm about fun, and that's where I'm going to lead from. And if you're coming to my training, if you're in my audience and you don't want to have fun, probably it's not the right place for you. If you want serious and stodgy, that's not me. So as I've done that, my business has increased, my money has increased, the amount of people who follow me online, the amount of people who come to my workshops, the enrollment has become so much easier because I'm not trying to be something I'm not.
Well, it worked for me, right? Our very first encounter, I didn't even really know you, and we sat and talked for a little while, and by the end I was like, sign me up for what you've got going on. I want to be a part of it. I was ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So it worked for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that you were looking for a different way to be that was more you. And I think you'd bought into a bunch of stuff that wasn't you. And I gave you permission to go way out of the box and take that leap into, I think, your true power and potency, right? Which was not the box you had kind of been pushing yourself to be in, right? And so that's also part of, I'm a permissioner. I'm not the commissioner, I'm the permissioner. And so that's another aspect of my leadership, is that when you give people permission to be them, that enrolls them, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about too. And it's like, yeah, it's like, here's the deal. Like, if you're like boring and stodgy, who's going to want to come to that party, right? If you're wanting to get people on your team, if you're wanting people to like be inspired or to like add their ideas or be part of something, that something has to be engaging to them. And the only way you're going to engage people is from what engages you, right? And so, yeah, there's one of my coaches, his name is Steve Chandler. And I think you've listened to some audios of his. I think I've given some of those to you over the years. And he is the driest dude. Like, his audios are so boring. Okay, but he's has a wry sense of humor and satirical. I think he's hysterical, but he drives some people nuts. But it's like he's being him. And like, if that's something that resonates with you, he's a 7-figure coach, right? It's working for him. Why? Because he's not trying to be like the other 100,000 coaches out there. He's being him. And that's the thing in leadership, is like, you don't want to be like everybody else. You want to have something that's unique, and because we want that. People want new experiences. People want something unique. People are looking for something different. If you're trying to be the same as everybody else to get people to enroll in whatever you're wanting to enroll them in, that's not very exciting, because it's like there's 80,000 people offering them the same thing. What makes you different? What makes you unique? Who are you that's different than the other people doing what you do? And, oh, by the way, you do it naturally, so it's not hard. Just be that more, right? And you know what I discovered when I was like, you know what? I actually just, I get bored of myself if I'm serious. And so, like, I don't want to bore myself anymore. So I like to have a good time. And I really like, to lead with this play thing. And what I found out was that there's so many people that would actually pay to learn how to pay to learn how to play. And there was people like, I pay for that. I was like, really? Because I didn't value it, because it was so me. I had friends doing play workshops and stuff, and I was like, like, I didn't need to learn how to play. It was not interesting to me. So I didn't think people would pay for what I had, because it was so natural to me. But I realized that there's a ton of people that are like desperately wanting play and fun in their life, and by me saying, this is who I am, I'm not trying to be Tony Robbins. I'm not trying to be, like the old wise coach. I'm the Pied Piper. And if that's something you're looking for, then if I'm being that in totality, you'll find me. When you try to do it someone else's way, you try to lead someone else's way, number one, it's not fun. And number two, there's an incongruency there, and people feel it, and it doesn't feel authentic. And it will actually repulse people rather than attract them to you.
So this brings up a big question for me about being seen, because as you were talking, I was realizing that I have a judgment that if you're a leader, you have to be really loud. But I tend to be a little bit more reserved and introverted, and especially in large groups. And my idea of a leader is they're the ones that are really big and loud, and everyone wants to follow them because they're the easiest one to be seen.
Mm-hmm. So where'd you get that idea? What idea is that? That leaders are loud? Or is it just something you've seen?
Yeah, maybe it's something that I've seen. They do tend to get attention because they are loud, so people see them, right? So like the class clown, I always thought
Mm-hmm.
they were so bold and strong because it was something I could never do. I didn't want to speak out that way, so I did think that they were so powerful and strong for doing something like that. So maybe it comes a little bit from that.
I I love what you're saying because it's like it really speaks to this whole topic of what we're talking about. I'm going to share a quick story that might help you with this, but also give people permission to see, hey, what's my leadership, right? And that's part of leadership is not letting other people define it for you. That's not leading your life. It's like, oh, leadership's what they did. That's you being a victim of the circumstance or following along with the status quo. Being a leader is you choose what leadership is, in part, right? So there's a line of leadership training that immersed in right now called Benevolent Leadership. And there's actually a really great book that you can get on Kindle or the physical copy of it on Amazon. It's called Benevolent Leadership. It's by Steve and Trutissa Bowman. And it was interesting to hear. I was on a live call series with them recently, and they were talking about how Trutissa, I believe she's from Hong Kong. And so like sometimes she's a little bit hard to understand, but she's quite quiet and doesn't speak up often. But it's so fascinating because of that, people stop and listen. Like they were talking about a training that they had done recently with like, a few hundred people. And like the two guys were talking quite a bit, but when Trutissa would speak, it's like people said you could hear a pin drop because everybody was like, if she's going to speak, we want to listen because she only speaks when she has something very valuable to say. So I just wanted to kind of rattle that. It's the loud person that leads, because I've found that oftentimes it's the quiet, present, sort of wise person that in the room that people tend to like begin to notice because they notice that they have wisdom because they're actually listening to what's being said. Because oftentimes the more quiet you are, the better listener you are. You're actually listening to what's happening. A lot of the loud people aren't listening. And so if you're not listening to your audience or the people you're leading, like how the crap can you lead them? Right? I just as a way to kind of challenge that a little bit, because there's as many kind of leaders as there are people on this planet. And being a leader means choosing what that means for you. What does being a leader mean to you? Are you willing to choose it and define it for yourself and undefine everything that you made it up that it wasn't? So one of the assignments that I would give people listening to this would be to write a list of leadership is, whatever, everything that you've made it mean. By the way, we've made up the meaning of every word in the English language. We've made it up. Somebody made it up, even if it goes back to Latin. Somebody said this word means this, right? And so you get to choose, but sometimes until you know how you're defining it, you don't know how you're being trapped by it, right? So write that down. Everything you've made, leadership means loud. Like for me, it was a dude in a suit. I was like, well, guess I'm not involved in that, right? It's like, and then go, okay, like, what are my natural qualities and abilities, right? And if you don't know what those are, ask people, what do you see in me? Why do you want to hang out with me? and those kinds of things, when you start to see what those themes are, then you can begin to leverage that, and that begins to become your leadership.
So you're saying really, I like that. No, because you talked earlier about creating your own definition, but it's not just creating your own definition, it's actually looking at what qualities you have and then making that your definition.
Mm-hmm. And you can expand on those. It's like, there's like, I'm always looking to undo any definitions I have of me. right? Like, I know I'm playful, but if I say that's all I am, right, then I'm limiting myself in some way, right? So like recently, I've been kind of opening up this really like raw energy, right? And it's like, in the past, I was a lot of times pretty gentle, or like, okay, have you thought about this, with my clients? And there's this new thing coming in where it's like, so how's that working for you? Right? Like, it's a way more direct. It's way more like kind of strong. It's still compassionate, but it's strong. And if I would have just made leadership what my natural qualities are like 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been among them. But there's this, what I believe is true leadership is actualizing your capacities and your genius abilities, your natural abilities, but the willingness to be any energy at any time that you need to be to move something forward. So if what's required is some strong talk, that you can actually call that forward, right? If what's required is more compassion in that moment, you have the capacity to turn that switch on. To me, it's having access to everything, but knowing who you are and coming from that place. I come from playfulness. I come from lightheartedness, but that doesn't mean that I can't be strong in a moment. Does that make sense? And so I think it's not just those qualities. I think that's a great place to start. But as you grow, and as you grow into allowing those qualities, you'll see other things that want to be developed that actually could be part of you, but you've decided they're not, right? That's not me, right? And so I decided that I wasn't the kind of coach that was an in-your-face, rah-rah coach, right? But that was limiting me in a way, because sometimes that's required. That's actually what the person in front of you needs, is that direct communication. And so to me, part of being a leader is always developing myself, always seeing, okay, what's that next thing that I need to lean into that's going to create more potency and power and awareness.
So that's just more things that you're changing your definition on, really.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at someone who's really strong and bold and you say, I'm not that, there's probably a judgment there as far as what it means to be strong and bold, that's hurtful or that's mean or something, versus sometimes that's the kind of energy you need to use to really get through to somebody.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of my reaction to things like that actually truly are just reacting to a lot of those kinds of people, that is their only switch, right? That is just how they are all the time, and they don't let themselves be anything else. So they're actually in a construct, a defined construct that doesn't feel authentic to me. But it's like, there doesn't mean there isn't something valuable there that I can learn from and take as part of what I can develop and be. It's just like, but I'm not going to limit myself to a definition of that's now who I am. Now I'm the strong talk coach. No, that's just something that I'm willing now to use when that's what's required. And I think that actually, like, if we could look at some bigger ideas about leadership, to me, I'm not really interested in the old model of leadership, which is control. I'm interested in a new model of leadership, which is about awareness, which is like about collaboration. And it's about invitation and inspiration as opposed to force and control, right? And so I think that there are some loose definitions that I have of leadership that I work around and within. And then within that, I'm like, okay, like, what do I want to bring forward? Who am I? What leadership quality wants to come through me today? And sometimes that surprises me, what shows up that day when I ask what quality wants to be utilized or what quality is required here. And so it's like definition is one of those tricky things, because like sometimes it's useful because it can point us in a direction. Like the definition of being playful really allowed me to claim more of who I really am. And if I can only be playful, if that's now defined me, then people won't take me seriously because I'm a one-trick pony, right? And so like I have to be able to be all of the things that I be. Like every one of us has the capacity to love, has the capacity to be playful, has the capacity to kill, has the capacity to do anything and everything. And to me, leadership is about being willing to utilize all aspects of self and to be able to know which one to call forward when.
So when we were talking earlier, I loved that you had said that leadership was inventing something that didn't previously exist in your universe.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that, because it's not necessarily that you have to create something that's never existed ever before, but just something that's new for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, because it's like, if I'm just looking out there to see what's already been done, or to, okay, they had success doing that, and I'm just going to copycat that, right? There's a reason we're looking over there thinking it's pretty cool. There's something about that that might be something we're trying to grow into. I think where we get in trouble is when we try to copycat that instead of going, okay, what is that for me? What that thing that's shiny over there, what is that for me? And how can I do that and or better, right? It's like, and then through that kind of questioning process, we begin to sort of see things or invent things that haven't been part of our world before, right? And to go, wow, like, when did this become my life? Like, you know, for years and years and years, like I always said, like I wanted to travel more, right? And last year I created, I went to 18 cities and 4 countries last year. And it was really this moment of a question that I had asked years before. And there was this moment where it's like, oh my gosh, this thing I want to do is an answer to that question. And now's the time. And it's like, yes. And like, I just stepped into this whole new energy, this whole new world of what my life could be. And it astounded me. It's like I was flying into Copenhagen going, when did this become my life, right? How cool is that? And it's like, I really believe that if we're being the leaders we're meant to be, that we'll be surprising ourselves all the time with what we step into and what we create. Because ultimately, to me, here's another definition, an undefinition definition, which is that a leader knows that they have the capacity to create anything and to change anything. That, to me, if I'm going to develop something in terms, when I work with people around leadership, I'm working with them essentially to get them to that awareness, to get them to that knowing that they can create anything and change anything. Because if that's true, then anything they see that might be out of the box, they trust themselves to be able to create it. It may not look exactly like they saw it, but they're willing to go for it because they know they have that capacity to create beyond what everyone else is creating. And that's when those new things show up in your world that you go, wow, when did this become my life and my world?
I love that. And I want to make a point about what you were talking about, questions and asking questions. But the thing that I've noticed about questions is questions will inspire or degrade. And a leader really will choose to keep asking the type of questions that inspire.
Yeah. And what I would say is that questions that degrade aren't actually questions.
That's true. They do. They actually are more of statements, even though they're questions.
Mm-hmm. Why is this happening to me?
Right.
Why does this keep happening? It's not really a question. It's actually a judgment on you disguised as a question. What's wrong with me that this keeps happening? It's, like, that's not a question. That's a statement, right? So a real question will always inspire, will always create greater. You'll always feel like some kind of lightness to it. If you ask a question, it feels like crap. It's not a question. You say, oh, okay, what judgment is this that I'm really, putting on myself in the form of a question?
It really reminds me of Einstein. I'm pretty sure it was Einstein that had said that he wasn't really that much more intelligent. He wasn't more intelligent than anybody. He just had a capacity to period of time.
To wonder for longer, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, he was willing to stay in the question. He was willing to not know the answer. And I really feel like the leadership of the future, the leaders of the future, because there's so much that changes every day. Like the way business goes, like businesses are changing. So many businesses are going out of business right now because business is changing so fast that unless you're in that sort of creative edge of, okay, now what wants to happen, and that willingness to let go of how you've done it and to be willing to change in a new direction is the number one quality they're looking for in new leadership, even in corporate America, because they realize that, there's no such thing as a 5-year plan. The amount of technology that changes every day changes business, changes how we work so quickly that the capacity, one of the capacities we have to develop as leaders is the capacity to change on a dime and to let go of our plan and to go, no, this is actually where we need to go. And no one's gone there before, but this is where we need to go. Like the people that we admire as leaders have that capacity. Like Richard Branson, like Sergey from Google, Steve Jobs, like they did that. They annoyed the crap out of people, but they also weren't, they never became Blockbuster, like that. Here is our model. People will always come and buy videos. Well, actually, if you were in your awareness, you would see that is changing. Like what happened in the music industry, same thing. They didn't get on board with the change. They kept trying to force us to do business how they wanted to do business. And it's like, that's no working. You have to be willing to change and to like, oh, okay, what's required now? Okay, well, this is how I saw it going, but it doesn't look like it's going that way. Okay, cool. Now what? And that, I think that's also why it's important to be undefined as a leader too, and to really not live within definition. Because if you define who you are, then you define what you can do or what you can't do. And so the better to go, okay, all right, cool. Like this is what needs to happen next. And I don't have that skill set, but because I know I have the capacity to be anything, develop anything, change anything, then I get to choose whether I develop that skill set. If that feels joyful or fun to me, or do I need to pull somebody in with that skill set that I don't have for where this business is wanting to go?
I was listening just the other day to a recording, and they were talking about how people will create a business or put out an idea and it explodes and becomes huge, and they think that they can do it again by following the same model, and what they're not realizing is that what they released and when they released it, it was the timing and what the world was ready for, and that changes. So they have to be willing to listen to those whispers or to the what's going on with the world and the marketplace, and launch what's right and not what worked last.
Yep. Even if last time was last month. Like that's how fast
Right.
it's changing, right? That's how fast it's
Right.
changing. And so it's like, okay, like even now coming into the online world, like I'm noticing how many strategies there are for this is how you are successful in online marketing. And you know what I'm asking? I'm asking what has not been created yet. That's the next wave. So I'm going to actually jump into the market doing something, some like maybe some things that are the same that feel like they feel light and it feels like the right thing for me. But I'm in my question, I'm like, okay, what's past what everybody's doing right now? Because even like, you know, the email campaigns and stuff like that worked really well a couple of years ago, they work with a crap now, right? And it's like Facebook started getting all this traction and people were like, oh my gosh, like I can't even be on Facebook anymore. So then it went to apps, and then you know, if you notice what's working and where the traction is continues to change. And so I think leaders have to be asking those kinds of questions. It's like, what's beyond how everyone's doing it that actually would create greater, or potentially is the next wave, so that you're at the front of that wave when it comes. Because if you jump in and go, how's everybody else doing it, you don't know if you're catching the end of the wave or the first of the wave. Right? And I found that actually, especially in the online world, like, oh, this is what people are doing, I'm going to do it. And then it's like, bah. It's like, oh, apparently that's done, you know. But that doesn't mean that, I mean, we have to take each thing, each idea and go, does it feel like to me? Or it's like, is some part of this work? And then I can add my own thing to it, right? It's not about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but it's about being in that moment of like, what's actually going to work here.
Cool. Well, I think we've covered the basics of leadership and started getting me excited about all the other topics and how in depth we're going to get with this.
Mm-hmm. Leadership's fun. Leadership is the ultimate leverage point. It really is. Like, it's like anything, like I've been playing this with this idea of the last week, so I'll just share it with you. It's like anytime I feel stuck this last week, I'm like, hey, where am I not leading in this area?
Mm.
And it's been so cool because it's always a leadership issue. When you're stuck, it's because you're at the effect of something. If you're at the effect of something, you're not leading. So like, it's like people think leadership is about other people and teams, but leadership is really about you. And like, are you and you creating your life how you want to create it? So that's what I would leave people with, and really like give yourself permission to define leadership for yourself and where you want to go with it. And then give yourself permission to undefine it and create new definitions as you go.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's important, right? That you be an allowance of your definition to change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's really, to me, like that ability to be on the edge, because that's what leadership is, right? I'm seeing something that the masses aren't seeing. I'm, at least in my field of leadership, right? I'm seeing something that no one else is seeing, and or I'm sensing something and I'm going in that direction. And it's like this sort of this unknown kind of leap of faith that we take. And within that, it's like, yeah, there's things that we can say that define that, like, oh, I'm an explorer, I'm an adventurer, that's great. But ultimately, as leaders, we're trying to go to something that's not defined yet. If we're actually creating something new in our universe, or maybe new in the world, or new in the, like, if for some leaders, we are bringing something that this universe and this world hasn't seen yet. Well, we're actually following something that's not defined. So it's like, it's interesting to try to define enough to be able to get what we're doing and where we're going, but not be attached to it, so that we can really live in that, really live in the unknown. Because that's where true leaders live, is they live in the unknown.
Perfect. I have to write that down. But thank you so much for your time, and we'll meet again soon and go over more important information on leadership.
All right. Thank you, Lynn. Bye, everybody.